So yeah, loving kindness. Oh, what a concept, what a feeling, even just in the word. And I'm sure you all remember the slogan that started up in the 80s, but it pops up on bumper stickers and on the bottom of people's emails even now, and that is practice random kindness and senseless acts of beauty. Well, great sentiment, but I don't know how much I'm in love with the words random and senseless. Random to me implies that there's nothing underneath it, that it just kind of pops without an underpinning, just kind of goes off half-cocked. And senseless? Oh, I don't think beauty is senseless. Maybe not head sense all the time, but certainly heart sense. So I've got an argument with those words. But then I went back and researched the origins of that phrase, and actually you can trace its origins. It's not just an anonymous thing that burst full-blown. It was actually written by a journalist by the name of Ann Herbert. She was on the staff of Coevolution Quarterly in the 80s, which was the successor to Stuart Brand's Whole Earth catalog in the 70s. All of us hippies who use that as our Bible. Okay. Well, Anne wrote that phrase on a placemat in a restaurant in Sausalito, California in 1982. And she had a reason for the random and the senseless that makes perfect sense once you know the whole story. And that was that she had heard the phrase random violence and senseless acts of cruelty. And in the best tradition of science of mind, and I have no idea if she knew about us or practiced what we preach, but boy, she sure lined up with us on this one. She recognized that the best way, when you see something you don't like and don't want in your life, it kind of doesn't work to push it away or get angry at it. That just feeds it more energy. But it's very useful to replace the negative word. Here's where I need two hands. Replace the negative word with its opposite positive, and put our attention on the opposite positive. So she took random violence and said, how about random kindness? And she took senseless acts of cruelty and said, how about senseless acts of beauty? So good for her. Wonderful. My problem is when I see it on a bumper sticker, I don't do the whole backstory. I just see the phrase, and I'm still unhappy with those words. So I've been playing this week with, well, what words would I put in there instead? And what I've come up with so far, and it's still a work in progress, I may change, or you may have a better idea, I've come up with spontaneous acts of kindness and intentional acts of beauty. And that makes me feel better. I like that. So I'm sticking with it. But as I say, if you want to play with it yourselves, play with your own words in there, play with your own whole statement. Write your own bumper sticker. I'm a big fan of bumper stickers. Some of my best nuggets come from bumper stickers. Okay, so spontaneous and intentional. And then we've got beauty. And why is beauty right there next to kindness? I thought about that, and I realized, as near as I can tell, beauty is a kindness. When a human creates something beautiful for themselves or to share with the world, this is kindness in action. Because when we see it, when we get to appreciate it, first response is, ooh, thank you, right? And natural beauty, the world gives us so much beauty. Sun and shadow on our mountains, oh my goodness, thank you. These summer afternoon skies with the cumulus clouds, thank you. Or wild creatures. I mean, I always figure they're giving me the gift of trusting me enough to even show themselves to me. I'm honored. And first, I always say hello. And second, I say thank you. My daughter lives down in southern New Mexico in a very rural situation down in the Gila. And she was writing me an email the other day, and life wasn't working very well for her, and this was going wrong, and that hadn't come through, and there's this real anxious, negative tone to things. And in the middle of the email, all of a sudden, there's this, oh, a goldfinch just landed on my clothesline. And now he's singing to me in his crystalline voice. And the whole tone of the email changed. The shift happened. The gift that little bird gave her. That's kindness. And she went on from there to the goldfinch flew off because what she calls the cardinal kids. There's a new set of fledgling cardinals, and they're just learning how to be birds. They came and landed on the clothesline, and they're clumsy, and they're awkward, and they're funny, and they're fuzzy, and more happiness, more gift. So the cardinal kids were kindness in action for my daughter that day. And of course it felt good to me too, because that's also how it works, is it circulates. An act goes out, we receive, we give back the thanks, the circles get wider. This is love in action. Loving kindness is love, energy circulating in the world. So in feeling that feeling, I started playing with memories. Let's just go back into memories of when I felt that, when someone was kind to me and gave me that feeling. And I was really surprised how some really early memories still had just as much energy living inside me as when they happened decades ago. Case in point, fourth grade, Edgebrook School, an elementary school in the city of Chicago. Weird setup. We were divided into half-year classes, but this school was so small, the population in that district was so small that we had 2 and even 3 half-year students in one classroom with one teacher. So she'd be working with one group while the other group or groups were doing their assignment, working quietly. And in this case, the teacher was talking to my group and telling us what we were going to do. We had been given a subject. She gave us a topic. We were supposed to look it up, read about it, and then write something about it. Fourth grade, writing a paper. I'm still doing that every weekend. Okay. But while I'm hearing her instructions, I see out of the corner of my eye that over in one of the groups that's working quietly, this boy named Richard had gotten up from his desk and he'd moved to the back of the room to our informal library. We had a couple of shelves of books back there. And he had dug for a book and he'd found it and he'd opened it up and thumbed through it, found a spot, and he walked forward and he put it on my desk. What? Okay. And he said, this is what she's asking for. I saw this last week when I was looking for something else, but this is what you need. Hope it helps. Whoa. We knew each other. We weren't friends. We were classmates. But he not only went out of his way to go get the book, he gave it to me. Kindness. And that was 57 years ago, 58 years ago, and I'm still capable of feeling the feeling. That's kindness. That's what we're talking about here. Now, you also do have to remember that you can't do it from a sense of should. It's not about duty. A sense of duty is going to just undo the feeling altogether. In fact, now we see if I can hold the mic, put on my glasses, open the book. Yeah. Whee! So talented, I tell you. But Ernest Holmes, our founder, author of our philosophy, says it very clearly. He says, now, I am not thinking of love as sacrifice and duty. Those who do things out of duty had just as well not do them. They are bloodless wretches. Man does not mince words. We don't do anything for duty. Supplant the word duty with privilege and spontaneity. There it is again. You don't love your children and your friends because it is a duty. You love them because you are not whole until you do. And then another big important point. It seems to me it starts with the self. Not selfish love, but self-realization, self-appreciation. You are the most wonderful thing you will ever meet. Is that cool? Okay, so kindness to yourself. That's part of it. That's necessary. It's important. We owe that to ourselves on a regular basis, and sometimes we ignore it at the expense of our health and our good humor and our willingness to just get out of bed in the morning. But what if we were practicing loving kindness to everybody out there and also to ourselves? And sometimes an act of kindness to ourselves does affect the whole world, whether we expect it to or not. Personal story, and this is me bragging. I really am proud of this one. Unapologetically proud of this. For the last 5 years, I've lived in a really tiny little kind of guest house attached to my landlord's side wall. One long window that faces the street. Just a living room and a kitchen and a bedroom is about the whole place. And because I like my stuff, I moved into it with most of my stuff and made it fit. I get teased about that. But the front room in particular, to make it beautiful for me, first I painted it this really rich, dark blue-green. Just makes me feel good. Kind of the color on your back wall here, only even darker and richer. And then I built bookshelves, big, heavy bookshelves on 2 walls of the room, and filled them up with all my books and books and books and books. And then placed 2 club chairs and an ottoman and this big basket lamp I made out of a really good Chinese basket, gold and light to read by. And that room makes me very happy, so it was a kindness to myself. But one day I was out at the mailbox, which is on the street, and this gentleman rode by on a bicycle, and as he saw me, he slowed down and he stopped. He's about my age, and he said, "Are you the folks that live in that house?" And I said, "Well, I'm the folk, singular. It's me and my 2 little dogs, but yeah, that's mine." And he said, "Well, I just have to tell you," he says, "my wife and I walk by in the evening, and we see through your window into that book room, and we fantasize what it would be like to have a room like that, and to sit together in that room and read in the evenings. And it just feels really good." And he says, "I just have to tell you This is a direct quote. "I just have to tell you, you do more good than you know." Can you see why I love that one? Oh my goodness, I will carry that one forever. And that's another one that's circular, because I gifted myself, but it gifted out into my neighborhood and I didn't even know it. And then he gives me the gift of telling me about it, and I give him the gift of really meaning my thank you, and it circulates, and it circulates, and it circulates. Saw a TV show a number of years ago, so long ago I don't even remember the name of the series, but it was one of those emergency dramas where you've got cops and firemen and EMTs all responding to the weekly crisis. And of course it runs kind of like a soap opera too, where the individuals that are the repeating characters get to explore their relationships with each other and tell you more about themselves. And in this particular case, there was this young paramedic, pretty new to the job. This guy was an absolute jackass. Totally self-centered, what's in it for me, all about the paycheck. The people he was serving and his co-workers were kind of more in his way than somebody he wanted to interact with. And really didn't like this kid, okay? But as we learn his backstory, we find out that his childhood was bouncing from one foster home and group home to another, that he never had a model of a loving, responsible, caring family. Well, all of those foster parents would have been, but he didn't know it that way. He didn't perceive it that way. And of course he created his own model of, I'm my only friend in the world and I got to make life work and heck with everybody else. Makes perfect sense. Didn't make me like him anymore, but I could understand. But in this show, his partner was a few years older than him and a few more years on the job. And the partner was a genuinely kind man. So in every situation, on every day that they worked together, the partner was practicing loving kindness. And sometimes that looked like just being kind to the old guy who's a hoarder that they have to pull out of his apartment and don't know whether he's even going to survive the ambulance ride to the hospital. And this partner is being kind to this old man. And the younger guy is like, why are you bothering with that? What is that getting you? Doesn't understand. But the longer he works with this fella, the more he notices that, he does seem to be getting something out of it. He's happier than I am. What's going on? And he starts kind of poking at it because he wants to be happy. And in the best Buddhist tradition, the partner says, well, I can't really explain it to you. I can't give it to you as a should or a dogma. But I can say, try it and see what it feels like. And the younger kid starts experimenting with it, and the show goes on from there. And some of his false starts and clumsiness, kind of like the Cardinal kids. But he's learning how. Now, I thought this was just absolutely brilliant screenwriting, because we're all kind of in that boat. Now, some of us are lucky to have been born into families that really know how to love and how to show up in their communities and how to model what it's like to feel good being a citizen of the world. And some of us are as wounded as that kid on the TV show, and most of us fall somewhere in between the two. But all of us are starting from right where we're at saying, let's try this and see what it feels like. That's all I'm inviting us to do today. Because, yes, it feels good. When we each go back into our memories of times someone was kind, we can feel that feel good. When we remember a time we were kind, we can feel that feel good. And of course, the Buddhists are really good at this. One of my classes this quarter in ministerial school is on Buddhism, so I'm exploring it more deeply than I ever have, learning a whole lot I didn't know. But one basic of Buddhism is that there are two halves to its practice. The one half that we hear the most about is the meditation, the mindfulness, the emptying, the getting so aware that we realize that these outer things that we're grasping for, that we're attached to, or that we're trying to push away from ourselves are not the source of our happiness, and they're not lasting. That's the bottom line of that internal practice for Buddhism, and all of that grasping and attachment is what the Buddha labels suffering. But the other leg that it stands on is once we've done the inner work, or while we're doing the inner work, we need to be doing the outer work of noticing that all these other beings on the planet are in the same boat as we are. And it is our privilege to love them. Another bumper sticker, the Dalai Lama. My religion is loving kindness. Yeah. In fact, the author of the one textbook that we're using in our class has lived with and worked with and translated for the Dalai Lama for years and years. And another quote from him is the Dalai Lama saying, "My religion is an open heart." There's a definition for us. And they're pretty much synonyms. So along with actual activity out in the world, making eye contact with another human being, smiling is a kindness. The Buddhists also practice a loving kindness meditation that you may have heard. I've heard it in many different forms, but my favorite is the simplest because it makes the most sense for me. And it's just to repeat, may all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from suffering and from the root of suffering. Try that with me. Repeat after me. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from suffering and from the root of suffering. May all beings be free from suffering and the root of suffering. There's a practice. Feels good. Because all beings includes us. Remember that. If it's all beings, we're one of them. So we're blessing the whole world and we're blessing ourselves when we say that. Or if you want a more westernized practice that's very similar in its intent, we go back to Ernest. Within the same lecture that I read from a moment ago. More dexterity going on here. He says, I think we ought to embrace the whole world in our thought and feeling. I do it definitely and consciously every day. Try to stretch my imagination. I thought if I was too busy for anything else, still I would want to take a few minutes to do this every day before I go to bed at night or sometimes when I wake up in the morning. Doesn't matter when. I call it stretching the mind, stretching the intellect, and I just let go and think of a few people that I think a great deal of, and I embrace them in my own consciousness. And then I go out, and I go out, and finally, in my imagination, I try to get my arms around the world. And I kind of squeeze it, kind of press it to me. Somebody may say, "You sentimental fool." But I would just as soon be a sentimental fool. I've met so many fools who are unsentimental and didn't even get any kick out of it. So if we're all going to be fools, let's have sense enough to be happy fools. All right? May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from suffering and from the root of suffering. Let's go into treatment together, shall we? So feeling this open space, this open heart, that our memories and natural tendencies have awakened within us. We recognize this as a space within us that always knows its true self is love. A space that always knows there's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is right here, right now, loving itself, being us, being me. That space within us is loving itself, being us, expressing that love out into the world and connecting with others and feeling that energy exchange and knowing it is good and it is true and it is purposeful and intentional and deeply, deeply true. And so I know and claim for each of us here that we have set an intention together today to stretch our imaginations, to stretch our intellect, to open our hearts to giving and receiving loving kindness. Knowing and claiming that this is our birthright, this is our natural state. This is our true life gift. And as we act on it in our meditations, in our daily exchanges, in our good thoughts for ourselves, and good gifts we give ourselves, we are stepping into this truth more deeply, more fully, more gratefully. And there's happiness, true, real happiness to be lived within this knowing. And so in great gratitude for this possibility, for this knowing, and for what unfolds from this knowing, from this moment into the next and the next. It's in gratitude that I release my word, I let it go, I let it be, I know it is already so. And we say together, and so it is.